This lockdown, I've been rediscovering my love of hill climbing. Admittedly, I only have one hill that I'm allowed to climb at the moment, but it's a pretty good hill. Several times a week I've been trying to get out here and explore, find new places, and I've been really enjoying it. I really enjoy the challenge of climbing a hill. I really like exploring all the new paths and places you can find. But if I'm honest, what I enjoy most of all are the views, and that is what I brought you up here to show you. Views are why I love hill walking. A good view is breathtaking. Walks on beaches and forests can be relaxing and picturesque. But for me, there's nothing as awe-inspiring as standing on top of a hill and taking everything in. Views allow you to see the bigger picture. You can look forward and see the route that you've taken to get here. You can look back at the paths that you've still to take. From a hilltop you can spot other landmarks and see where they are in relation to one another, like looking at a living map. Looking out over a view, I can't help but feel this sense of connection. It's impossible to deny that everything is connected from up here. Every person, every rock, every building, every tree, all part of one great tapestry. A tapestry that when you come down from the hill, you become a part of as well. For me, these are the moments that make the whole experience worth it. Any soreness from the climb or any anxiety about the descent melts away. And for a few minutes, I'm able to be completely present. And it's moments like these that remind me of our passage today. Our reading today comes from the book of Romans, chapter 8, verses 18 to 25. I consider that what we suffer at this present time cannot be compared at all with the glory that is going to be revealed to us. All of creation waits with eager longing for God to reveal his children. For creation was condemned to lose its purpose, not of its own will, but because God willed it to be so. Yet there was the hope that creation itself would one day be set free from its slavery to decay, and would share in the glorious freedom of the children of God. For we know that up to the present time all of creation groans with pain, like the pain of childbirth. But it is not just creation alone which groans. We who have the Spirit as the first of God's gifts also groan within ourselves as we wait for God to make us his children and set our whole being free. For it was by hope that we were saved. But if we see what we hope for, then it is not really hope. For who of us hope for something we can see? But if we hope for what we do not see, we wait with patience. Our passage today is all about having hope in difficult times. As with all of Paul's writings, Romans wasn't written as a textbook or theological treatise. It was written as a letter to real people living real lives. In this case, it was a letter to the church in Rome, Christians who lived in the capital of the very empire that persecuted them. These were people who led difficult lives. Paul was no stranger to suffering himself, and it's clear that he had deep sympathy with the Christians in Rome. And yet he said, hang on to your hope, because even the worst of what is happening to us now is nothing compared to the good that God has in store for us. In this passage he points us towards the future God has planned, to a world where we are God's children, free from sin and pain, where all of creation has been set right and is able to enjoy the goodness and glory it was created for. It's a beautiful vision of the future. Paul describes the world as groaning in pain, but it's not the pain of futile suffering. It's the pain of childbirth. The world is suffering now. We are suffering now, but it is not in vain. because God is in the process of bringing forth a new beginning, something much better than what came before. Paul says this is our hope, that one day God will bring this work to completion. So all we have to do is wait with patience. It sounds so simple when Paul says it, but if the last few weeks have taught us anything, it's that waiting isn't easy. One of the new lockdown rituals that has emerged is watching the weekly announcements. At pre-scheduled times, we turn on the TV to listen to whatever Boris or Nicola has to say. At first, those messages were quite dramatic. We tuned in with all sorts of questions. Can I go to work? Where can I go? What is allowed? And in response, the government was announcing radical, unprecedented new measures to respond to the situation. When the Prime Minister first addressed the nation, it was estimated that 27 million people tuned in, one of the most viewed TV broadcasts in history. But as time has gone on, these announcements have grown less dramatic. Now everybody has just one question: how long will this go on for? And the answer week after week has been the same: you're going to have to wait a bit longer. In our passage, Paul talks about groaning, and which of us hasn't groaned, or at least given a long, deep sigh, when you've been told it's going to be a little bit longer? It's in moments like that where we can start to feel hopeless, moments when the end seems unbearably far off, and we're not sure how we'll manage in the meantime. So how do we hold on to hope through difficult times? For me, my walking has reminded me of two lessons. The first is to remember your goal. Sometimes hiking can be really challenging. I remember when I was younger and was first taken to climb a Munro, I was overwhelmed by just how big the mountain was. I remember watching the darkening clouds with dread, hoping they wouldn't burst, and I can vividly recall the disappointment at every false summit, when you thought you'd finally made it to the top, only to see another ridge lying behind the last. But eventually, when I did reach the summit and was able to see the glen stretching out below, I realised that all the effort was worth it. When times are tough, it can be hard to find the energy to keep going. In times like these, you need to keep your goal in mind, remembering that every step you take, no matter how small, brings you closer to your destination. And know that once you reach your destination, all the effort you expended to get there will have been worth it. So keep your goal in mind and carry on the journey. The other lesson I've learned is to carry the mountaintop with you. Mountaintops are incredible while you're on them, but you can't stay there forever. A great view might be the high point, no pun intended, of a hill walk, but the journey isn't over. Eventually you have to descend the summit and return back to everyday life. But you return with the memory of the peace, the awe and connectedness that you felt up there. And that carries on through your day. And the same is true with our journey of faith. Throughout our lives we have moments where we experience God really clearly. It could be an experience of God in worship or prayer, or finding a moment of stillness that brings us absolute peace. It could come from experiencing divine love in the kindness of her, or from marvelling in awe and reverence at God's creation. These are our mountaintop moments, the moments when we can step back and see the whole tapestry in all its majesty. These are the moments that sustain our hope. They remind us that God is good and that we can place our trust in God. Romans 8 goes on to say, we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him. Our mountaintop experiences give us the courage to believe that that might just be true, and the encouragement we need to be patient. So this week, as we settle into another week of lockdown, one of I'm sure many more to come, I would encourage you to remember the mountaintop moments that you've had. Remember the times when you felt connected, when you've been aware of God's presence and able to trust. Let those memories renew your hope in a brighter future. And if at all possible, in whatever way works for you, see if there are ways that you can experience those feelings again this week.
As for me, I'm going to keep climbing my hill. As John Muir, my hometown's most famous son, once said, wherever we go in the mountains, or in any of God's green fields, we find more than we seek. So I'm off to see what I can find.